The rain was heavy against the courthouse windows when Judge Harold Whitcomb pointed his finger directly at me. "My name is Ava Ward. I am a nurse." Most people see the scrubs and the worn medical bag and stop asking questions after that, which suits me perfectly. I am 38 years old, and I have spent the last 4 years running a free medical clinic for veterans out of a converted building on Callaway Street. Before the clinic, I served overseas as a combat medic for 6 years. I do not talk about that part of my life very often. The work I do now matters more to me than who I used to be. I came to Hartwell County Courthouse that morning for one reason, to testify for Darren Moss, a 26-year-old former Army mechanic facing an assault charge. Darren was a clinic patient. I knew his character and his history. That was why I was there. I was not there to cause trouble. But trouble found me before I opened my mouth. "You." The judge stopped the hearing cold and aimed one finger at the third gallery row. "At me. In the scrubs. What exactly do you think you are doing in my courtroom?" Every head in the room turned. I stood slowly, holding my bag against my side. My pulse was running faster than I let show. "I am only here," I said quietly, "because someone asked me to come." He was not interested. He raised 2 fingers toward the security officer near the door. That was when Darren Moss shoved his chair back and stood up. The scrape of Darren's chair cut straight through the silence. "Don't," I said under my breath. But I already knew from the set of his jaw that he was past listening. I had seen that look in the clinic doorway the first day he came in, the locked expression of someone pushed to the edge of what they are willing to stay quiet about. "You do not know who you are throwing out," Darren said, his voice reaching the back wall. His hands gripped the defense table. "Your Honor, that woman saved my life." Judge Whitcomb's face did not soften. It hardened. "Sit down before you make your situation considerably worse." The defense attorney, Briggs, tugged at Darren's sleeve. Darren pulled free without looking. "Ask anyone who served with the 82nd Airborne who Night Sparrow is," Darren said, his voice cracking at the edges. The judge raised one eyebrow. "Is that supposed to mean something to this court?" But I had already noticed something else. 3 veterans across the gallery had gone still and were exchanging careful looks, the kind shared between people who recognize a name and are deciding how much to say about it. The gavel came down hard. "Enough theatrics. Sit down this instant." Darren sat. His eyes stayed locked on mine, burning with something I could not name, part fury, part helplessness, part absolute certainty. I kept my face still. That name, Night Sparrow, had not been spoken near me in a long time. I had worked hard to leave it behind. It belonged to a version of myself I had quietly closed away the day I came home. The security officer moved toward me with the look of someone just following orders. I did not resist. I handed over my bag and stepped aside so he could check it on the gallery bench. He unzipped it carefully. Inside were ordinary things. Nitrile gloves, rolled gauze, a blood pressure cuff, 2 sealed syringes, a penlight, saline wipes. The kind of kit I took everywhere, because 6 years in the field had made carrying it feel as natural as wearing shoes. He lifted each item and set it aside. From the bench, Judge Whitcomb watched with barely hidden amusement. "You see," he said, loud enough for everyone. "A nurse playing soldier." Laughter moved through a corner of the gallery. I did not react. I had learned a long time ago that silence is louder than anything you could say to someone performing for a crowd. But then the officer's hand went still. At the very bottom of the bag, folded flat against the lining, was a military patch. He pulled it out slowly, holding it the way people hold things they are not sure they are qualified to touch. The cloth was faded with years of washing, but the embroidered crest was clear, the insignia of a Special Operations Medical Evacuation Unit. He turned to show the judge. Whitcomb waved him off with a flick of his wrist. "Escort her out." The officer looked at the patch. Then at me. Then back at the patch. He folded it carefully. He did not move. The officer's hesitation lasted only seconds. But the whole room felt every one of them. Then a voice came from the back row. "Your Honor." An older man stood. He wore a plain gray jacket and moved with the stiffness of someone whose body had been used hard for many years. His hair was white at the temples. When he spoke, his voice carried the particular calm that only comes from standing in places where calm matters more than almost anything else. "My name is Walter Dre. I served 2 tours with the 3rd Infantry Division. I would like to say something, if the court allows." The judge looked mildly irritated but nodded once. "I never served alongside this woman," Walter said, nodding toward me. "But during my 2nd tour in the Sirhan Valley region, I heard stories about a combat medic operating under a call sign. Night Sparrow. The stories said she went into active firefights to pull out soldiers others had already written off. She did not just treat the injured once they were safe. She went in first to get them." The courtroom had gone very still. "I cannot tell you who this woman is. I am only telling the court what I personally heard from soldiers who were there. And what I heard did not sound like anyone playing a role." He sat down. I kept my eyes forward. I had not come here to have my past pulled open in front of strangers. But the room had shifted in a way I could no longer control. The judge cleared his throat. "Interesting. It changes nothing before this bench." The prosecutor stood and straightened his jacket like a man grabbing a solid railing. "Your Honor, I would like to redirect the court. Darren Moss is charged with aggravated assault following an incident outside Sutter Pawn on Sutter Avenue. The victim suffered a fractured wrist and bruising to the shoulder and jaw." Judge Whitcomb nodded, clearly relieved to be back on solid ground. "Good. Now, who authorized this individual," he gestured at me, "to appear?" "She is not on any filing I have received." Attorney Briggs stood carefully. "Your Honor, the request was submitted informally. Ms. Ward operates a veterans clinic in the city. She has direct knowledge of Mr. Moss's character." "Informally," the judge repeated, as though the word had a bad taste. I had been quiet long enough. "I was not interfering," I said. "Then explain why you are here." "Darren called me. He said the charge was a misunderstanding. I know his history and I know his character. I came to say that. Nothing more." "Who authorized your testimony?" I looked at Briggs. Briggs looked at the floor. The judge leaned forward. "No formal submission. No listed witness. Just a nurse who walked in off the street." His voice sharpened. "Give me one reason I should not hold this entire defense team in contempt right now." Nobody had an answer. The room waited. The rain tapped against the windows, and outside a car passed slowly on the wet street, and for a long moment the only sound inside courtroom 3B was the low hum of the heating system and the faint, rhythmic tick of the clock on the back wall. The hearing had been running close to 40 minutes when the court clerk slipped up to the bench and whispered something into the judge's ear. I watched Whitcomb's face the way I had learned to read people, not for what they showed, but for what they worked to hide. I saw irritation shift to confusion, then confusion settle uneasily into something that was trying hard to be skepticism but was not quite managing it. "Now," the judge said under his breath. The clerk nodded once. Whitcomb pressed 2 fingers to the side of his face and addressed the room. "There is apparently a call holding for this courthouse from the Department of Defense." The words dropped into the silence like a stone into still water. "They claim it concerns a decorated service member currently present in this courtroom." Every face turned, first toward the defense table, then slowly toward me. I lowered my eyes to the floor. "Tell them I am in session," the judge said. "They can hold or call back." "Sir." The clerk stayed put. They were specific. They said the service member should not be removed from this courtroom before the call is completed. The judge stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked at me, and for the first time that morning, his expression carried something other than certainty. Whatever absolute confidence he had walked in with was no longer quite as solid as it had been an hour ago. Put them on speaker, he said. The clerk set the courthouse phone on the bench and pressed the speaker button. The room went so still I could hear the rain tapping soft and distant against the far windows. This is Judge Harold Whitcomb. Hartwell County Court is in active session. Identify yourself. A short pause. Then a voice came through the speaker, clear, unhurried, carrying the ease of someone accustomed to being heard without ever needing to raise their volume. Your Honor, this is Lieutenant General Victor Hale, 3rd Army Command. A low murmur moved through the courtroom. People sat straighter without knowing they were doing it. Veterans nearest to me exchanged glances. A 3-star general did not call a county courthouse on a rainy Tuesday morning for a routine matter. Judge Whitcomb stiffened almost imperceptibly. General. I assume this concerns the defendant and his military background. No, Your Honor. The voice remained patient. This call concerns another individual in your courtroom. A member of my former command was notified by your clerk's office about the situation developing in this hearing. The judge's eyes swept the room. I am looking for Captain Ava Ward, the general said. The judge looked at me, standing in my scrubs, holding a worn medical bag, nothing about me explaining why a lieutenant general would ring a county courthouse and ask for me by name. His expression was carefully neutral. That depends on who is asking, General. A brief silence. It has already been established who is asking. Is Captain Ward present? Judge Whitcomb looked at me the way a person looks at a problem they have not yet solved. There is a woman present, he said. She arrived without documentation or proper authorization. Ask her to show you the tag she carries, General Hale said. The judge looked at the security officer. Without prompting, the officer reached into my bag and lifted out the small metal tag I had kept at the bottom of it for 4 years and never once considered removing. He carried it to the bench. The judge held it between 2 fingers and turned it over. It was worn smooth around the edges. Dull in places. On the back, a clean line of letters had been engraved in careful, even strokes. Not a name. A call sign. Night Sparrow. The judge set it down slowly and cleared his throat. General, anyone can have something engraved on a piece of metal. That is true, the general replied. So ask her where she earned it. Every person in the courtroom turned to look at me at once. I felt it the way you feel sunlight through glass, from every direction, all at once. The judge turned directly to me. Well, where did you earn this? I took one slow breath. For years of building something quiet, a clinic, a small apartment on Fillmore Road, a life where nobody asked about the years before. I had come here for Darren. Not for this moment. But the door was firmly closed behind me. I would prefer not to say in open court, I told him. He shook his head. That is no longer an option. The courthouse clock ticked on the back wall. The room was that quiet. I folded my hands in front of me and chose my words. I served as a combat medic for 6 years. I was assigned to a classified medical evacuation unit operating in the Sirhan Valley region. Our designation was Strike Medical 14. A sound moved through the gallery, not loud, but unmistakable. 3 veterans in the back had gone completely still. One of them gripped the arm of the woman beside him without appearing to notice. Strike Medical 14 was tasked with recovering wounded soldiers from areas considered too dangerous for standard evacuation. We had no helicopter support in most cases. We went in on foot and brought casualties out. I paused. The defense attorney was staring at me. So was the prosecutor. Judge Whitcomb had not moved. Our unit held the highest casualty rescue rate of any medical team deployed in that region during those years. I served as lead field medic. I left the military 4 years ago. I stopped there deliberately. I did not say what the end of those years looked like. I did not say how many people I could not reach in time, or what coming home felt like, or why a converted laundromat on Calloway Street had seemed like the only honest choice when I finally returned. Some things had no useful place in a courtroom full of strangers. General Hale spoke through the phone. For the record, Your Honor, Strike Medical 14's operational files are held at the highest classification level available to any medical unit in the United States Armed Forces. The general spoke again, and this time his voice was quieter. Mr. Moss. Darren sat forward instantly. Sir. Answer one question for the court. On March the 14th, on the Eastern Road outside Carif Station, who pulled you out of that convoy? Darren went very still. His jaw worked silently for a moment. I recognized that look. I had seen it in the clinic when patients talked about the things they normally kept locked behind everything else. Night Sparrow did, he said. Barely a whisper. Tell the court what happened. Darren cleared his throat. Our convoy hit an IED on the eastern approach. The lead vehicle went up. I was in the second truck. The blast threw me clear. When I came around, my jacket was burning. I could not get up. Someone was already dragging me back from the vehicle. I kept trying to stand. She kept moving. She went back into the fire twice more after she pulled me out. He stopped. Pressed his mouth closed for a moment. 3 of us made it out of that vehicle. 2 of us were already past what any reasonable person would have gone back for. The courtroom was completely silent. For the record, General Hale said, that incident resulted in official commendations for Night Sparrow, which she declined to accept in any public ceremony. I kept my eyes on the floor. When I finally looked up, Judge Whitcomb was watching me. Something loud inside him had gone quiet. The prosecutor had been quiet for several minutes. That was not natural for him. He tapped his pen once, set it down, and stood. Your Honor, whatever Captain Ward's service record may contain, the charge against Mr. Moss still stands as documented record. A man was injured. The judge nodded for him to continue. Darren Moss was identified by 2 witnesses as the individual who struck the victim outside Sutter Pond on October 6. The victim sustained a fractured wrist and bruising to the shoulder and jaw. I had been waiting for this moment since I arrived. May I speak? The judge nodded once. The man Darren struck is named Reg Connors. He runs an informal lending operation targeting veterans in financial difficulty. He charges interest rates that are illegal in this state. When borrowers fall behind, he does not send letters. He sends people. A murmur moved through the gallery. On October 6, a veteran named Paul Whitfield, a patient at my clinic, was cornered outside Sutter Pond by 2 men working for Connors over an unpaid debt. Darren was nearby. He stepped in to stop it. An assault is still an assault regardless of motive, the prosecutor said. Darren called me immediately after. I arrived within 11 minutes and treated Whitfield for a dislocated shoulder. I documented everything that evening. I reached into my bag. I have those records with me. Judge Whitcomb leaned forward as the clerk came down to collect them. The clerk carried my documentation to the bench. At the same moment, General Hale spoke through the phone. Your Honor, I have sent Captain Ward's official service records to your courthouse fax line. Your clerk should have them shortly. The clerk stepped away and returned within 2 minutes carrying a neat stack of printed pages, which he laid flat on the bench without a word. Judge Whitcomb read in silence. The room waited. I watched his face move through each page the way you watch weather crossing open ground, slow, inevitable shifts, pressure building without quite releasing. He stopped on one section longer than the others. His jaw tightened. He turned the page and stopped again. There is a record here, he said carefully, of an operation in the Sirhan Valley. A building collapse. 12 soldiers trapped. All recovered. He looked up at me. It also states you declined a public commendation ceremony after that operation. Yes, I said. Why? I chose the words carefully. Because the soldiers I pulled out deserved the ceremony. Not me. The judge set the pages down. He looked at the prosecutor, then at Darren, then back at me. I knew I looked uncomfortable. I always did when attention pressed on me like this, too warm, from too many directions at once. Your Honor, I said quietly, I did not come here to talk about myself. I came to speak for Darren. Can we do that now? A long pause. Then the judge nodded. Someone in the gallery asked why I had left the military. It was not a formal question, it slipped out the way things do when a room full of people has been quietly wondering something and one person finally gives it a voice. Judge Whitcomb looked at me like he wanted to know too. I kept it simple. Because saving people should not require a battlefield. A few people shifted at that. I had spent 6 years working in conditions that no one should sustain for very long. I lost colleagues. I made decisions under fire that I carry every day. When I came home, I did not want to stop helping people. I just wanted to do it somewhere quieter. I looked at my bag. A building came up on Calloway Street. It had been a laundromat, good windows, enough room for an exam table and a waiting area. I signed the lease with 4 months of saved pay and opened the clinic the following spring. You run it alone? The judge asked. I have 2 volunteer nurses on weekends and a retired physician who donates 3 hours every Thursday afternoon. Otherwise, yes. That was how I had met Darren. He walked in one afternoon with an untreated shoulder injury he had been ignoring for weeks, wearing the expression of someone who expected to be turned away and had come in anyway. There was quiet courage in that, even if he never saw it that way himself. I had treated him without paperwork, without a bill, without a single condition. He came back the following week. And the week after that. That was the whole story, really. Judge Whitcomb sat back in his chair and went quiet. Not the working quiet of someone thinking through procedure. The heavier quiet of someone deciding something about themselves. I had watched that moment happen before, the exact point where a person who has been wrong finally understands it, and has to choose between protecting their ego and simply doing the right thing. From the outside it always looks easier than it is. He looked at the military records on his bench. Then at the small tag resting at its corner. Then at the folded patch beside it. Then at me, standing in my scrubs in the gallery, holding a worn bag, looking nothing like whatever he had assumed I was when this morning began. He had called me a nurse playing soldier. He had pointed at me in front of a full room and ordered me to leave. He had waved off his own officer when that man tried to show him something he should have taken seriously. I gave none of that back to him with anger. I could not afford to. Darren was still sitting at the defense table with his future waiting for a decision. If I let the morning's humiliation show on my face, it would pull the room in the wrong direction. The most effective thing in a moment like this is to stay completely still and let the truth do its own work. But I will not pretend the morning had cost me nothing. It had. The judge folded his hands on the bench. Let us continue, he said. I heard the courtroom doors open before anything else registered. Not the quiet click of someone arriving late. This was a different kind of entrance, measured and deliberate, carrying the weight of authority that changes the pressure in a room before a single word is spoken. Lieutenant General Victor Hale walked through the doors in full dress uniform. 3 stars on each shoulder. The veterans in the gallery came to their feet first, before most of the room had finished processing what they were seeing. Then the rest followed, row by row, instinctive, almost involuntary. I did not stand. Not out of disrespect. I was too surprised to move. The general was supposed to be a voice on a speakerphone. A signature on a faxed document. He was not supposed to be walking down the center aisle of Hartwell County Courthouse on a Tuesday morning, scanning the room with the flat, practiced efficiency that senior officers develop after years of entering difficult situations and needing to read them in the first 5 seconds. His eyes found me immediately. He crossed the floor with the precision of someone not performing the moment, simply moving through it. He stopped 2 rows from where I stood. He looked at me. I looked at him. Then he turned to the judge. Your Honor. I apologize for the interruption. I was conducting a briefing at Hartwell Air Base and came as soon as I was able. I pressed my lips together to keep anything from showing on my face. The general turned to face me. The courtroom was so still I could hear someone in the back row breathing. "Permission to address Night Sparrow," he said. No drama. No ceremony. Just the words, the way he had said them in very different places across many years. I let out a slow breath. "You always liked that call sign too much," I said. A small smile crossed his face. It lasted exactly 1 second before the formal expression returned. "Because it was accurate," he said. He turned to the bench. "Your Honor, I will be brief. Captain Ava Ward served under my command for 3 of her 6 years in service. I watched her carry out medical evacuations in conditions that experienced combat soldiers refused to enter. I recommended her for official commendation on 4 separate occasions. She declined public recognition every single time." He paused, letting the room absorb that before continuing. "She is not a nurse playing a role. She is one of the most capable medical officers I have commanded in 22 years of active service. She left the military quietly and continued serving her community in the way she chose. She walked into your courtroom this morning carrying nothing but a medical bag and a request from a young veteran who trusted her." He held the judge's gaze without blinking. "She deserved considerably better than what she received in this room today." The word settled with the weight of a door closing for good. I stared at the floor. My throat had gone tight in a way I had not expected. Judge Whitcomb sat with the general's words for a long moment before speaking again. He looked at the records. Then at the tag. Then at me. "Captain Ward. The commendations listed here, the rescue at Karif Station, the building collapse in the Sirhan Valley, the operation designated Falcon Recovery. You were present at all of these?" "Yes," I said. "And you declined public recognition for each one?" "Yes." He was quiet. Then, without challenge, "Why?" "Because recognition felt like it belonged to the people I was pulling out," I said. "Soldiers who came back missing limbs. Soldiers who lost people they had served beside for years. Soldiers who came home and could not sleep for the noise inside their own heads. When those people are sitting in the audience, standing at the front of the room felt wrong." Someone in the gallery quietly cleared their throat. "I did not leave the military to be remembered," I continued. "I left because I wanted to help people without the weight of institutional process that came with the uniform. The clinic lets me do that." General Hale spoke. Before her resignation, Captain Ward was offered a permanent position in military medical leadership. She declined that as well. I had not expected him to mention that. He glanced at me briefly. "Some things," he said, "need to be said out loud." The judge looked at the worn metal tag still sitting at the corner of his bench, small, quiet, and carrying more history than this room had been ready to hold. The prosecutor requested a brief recess. When court reconvened 15 minutes later, he rose with the careful look of a man who had made several phone calls he did not enjoy. "Your Honor, the prosecution has received additional information regarding the events of October 6th. The judge nodded for him to continue. "Security footage from the exterior camera at Sutter Pond has been reviewed by our office. That footage shows Darren Moss arriving on the scene after the confrontation had already begun. It also shows the alleged victim, Reg Connors, in possession of a metal pipe prior to any involvement by Mr. Moss." Silence moved through the room. The prosecution is prepared to acknowledge that the original incident report did not accurately represent the full sequence of events. Attorney Briggs sat up very straight. Darren turned his head slowly toward me. I kept my expression steady, but I felt something loosen in my chest that had been tight all morning, a breath I had not fully taken since I walked through those courthouse doors before dawn. Furthermore, our office has received information from 2 additional veterans who have separately filed complaints against Connors for predatory lending and intimidation. Those cases are currently under independent review. Judge Whitcomb looked at him steadily. "Are you moving to revise the charges?" "We are requesting a full review, with a view to dismissal, pending investigation of Mr. Connors. The judge looked at Darren, gripping the table edge and absorbing every word. Mr. Moss. It appears this case is considerably more complicated than it was first presented to this court. He looked at the general. Then at me. Let us do this properly. The judge asked the clerk to clear the first 2 gallery rows, then called for order. Then he looked at me. No gavel. He simply folded his hands on the bench and spoke in a tone I had not heard from him at any point since the morning began. Captain Ward. I owe you an apology. The room was silent. I dismissed you without cause. I humiliated you in front of a full room. I used language that was disrespectful and made assumptions that were not only wrong but that I should never have made. He paused. I am sorry. I nodded once. That was all I had for him. He seemed to expect more, visible emotion, formal acceptance, some outward sign the apology had landed somewhere. But I was tired in a way that goes deeper than sleep can fix, and I had nothing left to perform for anyone in that room. I have one request, I said. Name it, the judge replied. That Darren gets real help instead of a prison sentence. I looked at him. He was staring at his hands. He is not a criminal. He is a veteran the system never properly supported after he came home. That failure happened long before any of this. If the court dismisses the charge, I am asking that he be connected to Veteran Support Services, not as punishment. As something he is already owed. The judge looked at General Hale. The general gave one quiet nod. Charges against Darren Moss are dismissed, the judge said. The case is referred for full review. Veteran Support Services will be arranged through this court. Darren put his face in his hands. The courtroom emptied slowly, the way rooms do after something significant, with people moving and talking in low voices, as though none of them were quite ready to return to an ordinary afternoon. Chairs scraped across tile. The rain had stopped at some point during the hearing without any of us noticing. Pale afternoon light was now pushing through the tall courthouse windows, laying long quiet strips across the gallery floor. General Hale fell into step beside me as I gathered my bag. I can arrange a vehicle to take you wherever you need to go, he said. I have patients at 3, I told him. I will take the bus. He studied me for a moment. Same as always. Same as always. Darren caught up with me near the doors. He was trying to find words and not quite locating them, which I understood completely. Some things do not have clean sentences. You did not have to do this, he finally said. I know, I told him. That is exactly why I did. I put a hand briefly on his shoulder. Come to the clinic Thursday. We are going to get you properly connected to the VA mental health program. No more pushing things aside. He nodded. The corners of his eyes were red. I walked the long courthouse hallway toward the street. Outside, the air was clean the way it only gets after rain, cool and full of space. The pavement was still dark with water. The trees along Pemberton Avenue were dripping quietly into the pale afternoon. I walked to the bus stop, sat down, and checked my phone. Plenty of time to make it back to Calloway Street. That was enough. If this story reminded you that the quietest person in the room sometimes carries the heaviest history, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if stories like this one matter to you, subscribe. Every week, we bring you a new one about the people who serve without ever asking to be seen.